Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, it's Van Diaz, back in our Cardfight Vanguard deck profile, so I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and sorry. This time we are covering DZ Set 2 for Dark States, Blangdmire. So, Blangdmire, the final faded one revealed, and probably the one with the most broken divine skill that we all solemnly agreed upon release. Because his divine skill pretty much just says no, granted to only the fighter and the vanguard, but apparently shutting down two of the most important parts of the board suddenly gives the side doing that a huge advantage. So let's go and get started, shall we see what we got, because Blangdmire is so busted consistent. It's like Gandiva, except less controlling with it. It's just more aggro Gandiva, but point is, it was so good right out the box. Let's get this started, shall we? First up, we have our energy generator. So you may have one energy generator, ride deck, crest in your ride deck, auto ride deck. When you would ride, put this card into your crest zone. If you win second, energy charge 3. Continuous after 10 energies, and auto at the beginning of your ride phase, energy charge 3, and then act once per turn, energy boss 7 to draw a card. All around pretty solid. Honestly, with the way Blangdmire works, you would think you would be able to draw pretty often off this, and spoiler alert, Blangdmire literally costs nothing in terms of resources. But you're not going to use this often to draw a card simply because you have a really good support card that costs 3 energy. On the bright side though, you're at least going to be able to use it every turn because it gives you a free energy charge 3 every turn. So you're never going to get that draw off unless you bricked hard, but on the bright side, at least that energy is going into a really good price, so it's a nice crest to have. Then, of course, we have our starter, Cavity Maliglia, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 6k base, auto remote upon if you're draw card, standard starter, nothing special, just a free draw if you go second. None of the ride line really requires this, but it's nice to have it there because it's a part of the actual Blangdmire ride line, and because none of the ride line requires any specific starter, might as well just run the one that fits it. But one of in the red deck of Cavity. Then we have our triggers. First, we're going to Overtrigger and Terrifying Wicked Dragon King Vamphyrs, grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power, Overtrigger, move Overtrigger in your deck. When revealed as a trigger, move that card, draw a card, choose one mute, it gets plus move for the turn, and if revealed it during your draw check, activate its additional effect, which you get during your turn. All your vanguards get plus 10,000 power and plus 1 critical to end this fight. All around pretty solid because whether you damage check it or drive check it, you're getting a free 1 million to draw to someone, so either something's not getting hit that turn, or something is going to hit that turn, unless your opponent has a PG, which is pretty solid. But then also, if you pull this offensively, the vanguard for the rest of the game will have 10,000 and extra critical, and depending on when you pull this, that is so deadly, because like, say for example you pull it on grade 1 offensively, that means for the entirety of the game, you are going to have a 18, or not 18, at least a, like, whatever your vanguard's base power is, plus 10 in a crit, which means your opponent will always have to guard because of crit pressure. Yeah, Vamphyrs all run pretty solid in a deck where the vanguard inherently can get a crit, so much numbers, and then not to mention the fact it can shut down PGs. Yeah, Vamphyrs is a pretty solid choice. You can run Volna from a multi-attack, but Vamphyrs just for that pressure, especially because if you see it early, your opponent's definitely losing the game now. Then we have our normal triggers. We run 3 copies of Rouse Wild Master Riley, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 4k base. Draw trigger, discard circle, opponent's vanguards are grade 3 or greater. She gets plus 5k shield, so all around pretty solid. So you know she's a 10k shield, which is nice, and she's a draw trigger, so she helps increase the hand. And this deck does not like drive out all of its deck cards into the soul for some reason. I mean, it can, but it does it selectively, so you can keep the triggers in deck anyways. So you don't have to worry about decking yourself out, so it's really nice to have the draw triggers there to help increase the hand. Then we have a crits, 4 copies of Direful Doll Bethany, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k power. This can really be any crit. I just chose to run this because in the demo start decks, the starter and the triggers were supposed to be the same as like the canonical starter and triggers as the respective faded ones of the nations, and since Bethany was the critical in the demo deck, I might as well just run Bethany here, but you can run any crit you want here. And then I have 4 copies of Stem Deviated Dragon for worst case scenarios, grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 4k power, critical trigger, auto rear guard, anything about this unit boosted, put it to soul, choose units, it gets 2k for the turn. All around pretty solid. You know, you run 8 crits for that pressure because your vanguard already has the extra crit pressure on it, and not to mention that during your divine skill turn, you can shut down PGs for the entirety of the turn, so you want to be able to force out as many crits as possible because the deck already gets a good amount of numbers. So I like to run the crits here, and then Stem Deviate is here specifically just in case you brick and the entire game you are only drawing triggers. It does not sound like you would do it often because you really don't, obviously. But it is a situation that can occur. It is a situation that almost occurred. I didn't have to resort to calling Stem Deviate to get soul, but it almost happened. So it's like kind of like a wise note to just have it on hand just in case you really need to like get an extra soul card just so you can actually use Blangdmire skill, because that's like the one cost he actually does have. He does technically need soul. So 8 crits for the pressure, 3 draws for hand cards, and then of course we have 4 heals and Joyful Songstar. Grade 0 boost, getting a shield, 5k power, standard heal, nothing, just a free heal if you have more damage than your opponent or equal to them. You can really make this any heal you want. Again, I just chose it because with the demo deck heal, and the demo decks have the same triggers and starter as the faded ones. And you can make the counter heals if you want, but I personally do not like the counter heals. I feel like they're too situational, being fluctuating 10 to 25k shields. I'd much rather have a consistent 15k shield, but I mean, take that as you will. So we have a total of 4 heals, 8 crits, and 3 draws. Then we have our grade 1s, 4 copies of Friend of the Netherworld Ling, or as I like to say, Friend of Mine Ling, because every deck that I have that has like an extra card space in Dark States, I just shove Ling in because she's honestly really good. So grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto when she's placed on the rearguard circle, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, choose one, put it to soul, and then put the rest on bottom deck. Sadly, you do have to send something to soul, and most of the time when I use her skill, she flips over triggers, which isn't that great, but all around she is useful because she allows for early game rush, because I know some people don't like to call out their really important units that are grade 1 to board if they require the grade 3 because your opponent might kill them, so you can't really aggro as well if you're worried about your cards. But Ling activates on place, she still gets you a free soul, and she doesn't cost any counter blast, soul blast, nothing to do that. So all around Ling's very solid for early game rush plays because you don't have to worry about her dying. She's very solid for like helping filter, and not to mention that she gets you a free soul, which does help out with the deck a lot. 4 of Ling, very solid card. I can recommend her from like almost every Dark States deck I've played her in. Then we have 4 copies of Brainwash Swirler, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto when placed on rearguard circle, soul charge 1, auto rearguard when when a card is put into your soul by soul charge, your Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater, he'll get plus 5,000 power for that turn, 10k if you soul charge 2 cards at a time. So Brainwash is a really good card, and everyone knows that because Brainwash is running in pretty much every Dark States deck because of how good he was. And I chose to put him in here simply because it was like, this deck was kind of based off of Suo's, and yeah, I did not expect this deck to soul charge as much as it does. Granted, it doesn't, like, not all of the soul charging it does is, like, Brainwash type of soul charging. Like, sometimes it's, like, Ling where it just puts the stuff to soul. But, yeah, let's just say this. The very first game I played with this deck, this deck is the exact same version as it was when I first played it. The first game I played it with this deck, on pure accident, I wasn't even trying to do this, I got to 14 soul by first grade 3 turn. Again, pure accident, didn't try to do this, first time playing the deck. And it's on camera for proof. 4 of Brainwash. It can get good numbers, especially in the late game. It's a free soul charge. And like I said earlier, you're not constantly sending everything to soul, so you don't have to worry about decking out. It's a good card. It's a nice 4 of. Then we have 4 copies of Invoke Alchemist, probably one of the best grade 1 support cards, if not the best. Okay, it's definitely the best grade 1 support cards out of the faded grade 1 support cards, but I want to say it's probably one of the best grade 1 support cards I've ever seen. Anyways, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, continues rear guard during the battle that it boosted. If your Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater with Blangdmire's card name, plus 5k power, so 13k booster, as the other ones are. And then auto rear guard, when this unit boosts a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Blangdmire's card name, it gets another 2k for that battle, so 15k booster, which is nice. And then if your bind zone has 4 more face down cards in it, which Blangdmire automatically gets you on his first swing, counterblast 1, choose one from rear guard, stand it. So on your first swing, you're automatically getting 4 attacks, and your Vanguard's going to be swinging for at least, if for you to get the 4 attacks, you have to bind and get the numbers for it. So you'll probably be at 23 plus 15. So you have a 38k Vanguard with a restanding rear guard. But then if you have 8 or more cards in your bind zone that are face down, that unit will also get plus 15k. So that unit's most likely hitting that turn, which is pretty solid, and it's not a once per turn, so if you found a way to restand Invoke, well, screw your opponent. And that's honestly pretty solid in a deck that it can, again, nullify Sentinels, get good restand. None of this requires the opponent to be at grade 3, I might add, and in this deck, it is technically possible to get to 8 soul cards before your opponent gets to grade 3. It's hard to do, and it requires a lot of RNG, but that's why cards like Ling over here, who can select a soul charge, are here. 4 Invoke Alchemist, all around a very solid grade 1, gets a restand, gets numbers out of it, is an easy 13k booster, possibly 15k, and is like the best of the faded grade 1 support cards, and the only other one I would say rivals it is Aerial Sage, but Aerial Sage requires outside cards to be good. Invoke requires just himself. So 4 of Invoke, very solid card, love the skill a lot, good card. Then we have 4 copies of our PG and Ridisco Disputer. Grade 1 boost, 0 souls, K base, contains Sentinel. We have only 4 Sentinels in deck. I almost put on guard circle. Choose one of your units that cannot be hit till in battle. And if your hand has 2 or more cards in it, choose a card from hand discarded. Standard PG. Nothing to special about it. Basically, it means if this and only one of the cards in your hand placed on guard circle, you don't have to discard one, which is great because that means you can be as aggressive as you want in the early game. And then when your opponent counterattacks you, you can just throw down this and you'll be safe. And considering the fact that you do want to try to push your opponent to 4 damage as fast as possible, especially if you found a way to consistently pull off the go to 8 soul plan or 8 face down bind plan while your opponent's at grade 2, then yeah, you're definitely going to put them to high damage, and that's what Ling is for. You call Ling in the early game, especially if you went second, so you can bully their grade 1 Vanguard. Brainwash, maybe even call, because the power will just stack up on its own as time goes on, so you don't have to worry about that too much. And then never call Invoke to the front row unless you have 2. If you have 2 Invokes, yeah, call one to the front row, keep the other one in hand until you get to Blangdmire, and then just keep bullying the opponent's Vanguard. All-around skill Disputer is a very solid PG. You can really run any PG, Reskill Hate Dragon, or Repelled Malice Dragon, or Reskill Disputer. I choose to run this one because it came out close to the time of Blangdmire's release, so 4 Reskill Disputer. Then we have last grade 1 in the deck, one of in the red deck, none in the main deck, of Hollow Raptor. This is not a raptor, this is a bird. Like, look at it. It's a really cool looking bird, and it's a unicorn horn, but this is a bird. This is not a raptor. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto room wrote upon by Vacant Fang, reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, put all grade 1 or greaters from your soul among them into the... Put all grade 1s or greater from among them into the soul, and then put the rest on bottom, and then if you put 2 or more cards into soul, draw a card. All around pretty solid, because just by writing from the specific grade 2, you either get to soul charge between 0 and 3, and then if you soul charge at least 2 of them, you get to draw a card. And that first game, yeah, it definitely took a lot of luck, but in that first game that I played that got me to 14 soul, I don't know if it was this one's or Vacant Fang skill, but I flipped all 3 cards that I could send to soul, and I sent them to soul. So yeah, it's possible to send all 3 to soul, which is solid. The only downside is you have to put all of them, so it could lead you to possibly decking out. But again, that game I pretty much got every soul charge card possible. Well, not every soul charge card possible, but and I still didn't come that close to decking out. So Hollow Raptor is a very solid grade 1. Get you soul, and quite literally Blangdmire only requiring 4 for his skill, and you automatically get 3 from the ride line. If you flip over and just any one card from Hollow Raptor, like even if you just fail Vacant Fang outright, if you just flip over 1 card from Hollow Raptor, you can immediately use Blangdmire at least once. So that's pretty cool. Either way, the Hollow Raptor, very solid grade 1, nice first skill, one of in the ride deck, none in the main deck. Then move on to our grade 2s. 4 copies of a grade 2 that I feel like anyone that remembers this from when it actually came out is probably roasting my ass from why I didn't want to run it in the first place. But we have Crimson Expeller, grade 2 and set 5k shield, 10k base, auto rear guard once you attacks into a Vanguard, free soul charge of 1, doesn't matter if they're grade 1, 2, or 3. Again, you aggro down. This is what the Ling, Brainwash, and Crimson Expeller, of course, are for. So you know you can just constantly push your opponent to higher damage as the game goes on. And then his other skill, the skill I keep forgetting to use because I keep forgetting it's in soul, Act Soul, Counterboss 1, put this card into your drop zone to soul charge 1, then you choose one of your Vanguards, and it gets plus 10k for that turn. So Blangdmire already hits pretty good numbers already, regardless if you're on first turn of binding or second turn of binding, but being able to give more numbers to the Vanguard in a deck that doesn't really use up that much CB is pretty good. Crimson Expeller is a great grade 2. He's nice for the early game rush because he can still get you soul. He's good for getting the Vanguard more power and soul charging, so he also procs off Brainwash. There's nothing really not to like about him. The only downside is he costs a CB, so like he'll compete with your other main CB user, this thing, and also invoke Alchemist. But if you have the spare CB for Expeller, definitely go for it because any number helps, especially when your opponent can't PG. So 4 of Crimson Expeller, very solid grade 2. Then we have 4 copies of Steam Raider Zamug, grade 2 and a 5k shield, 10k base. So, like how I think Invoke Alchemist was the best grade 1 of the Faded 1 support cards, straight up Zamug is the best of the graded 2 support cards. There's no argument in this. The only argument we could make is Shura, who gives Vargas like 7 attacks on the best way possible if you play it right. But Shura also eats into CB. This, well, yes, eats into EB. Nothing else in the deck uses EB. So Zamug pretty much gets the freebie win here. So grade 2 and 5k shield, 10k base. Auto and place on the rearguard circle. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard Blangdmire's card name, Karen Boss 1, reveal the top 3 cards of your deck. Put any number of them into Soul Shuffle the deck. And if you put at least 1, you draw 1. So you may draw 1. So you don't even have to draw 1 if you're worried about decking out. But the best part about this is just buy a free CB, again, possible free Soul Charge 3, like Hollow Raptor, but you get to shuffle the rest of the cards back, unlike Hollow Raptor. And if you put at least 1, and it can be any card, it doesn't have to be specifically grade 1 or greater. So if you just want to put a trigger, just to put a trigger, maybe because all of them are triggers, you still get to draw a card as long as you put 1 card. So all around, Zamug is pretty good for that reason alone. Very good selective Soul Charge and increased hand effect. And then auto rearguard when this unit attacks into anything. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard Blangdmire in its card name, and this unit's critical is 1 or less, Energy Blast 3, and this unit gets +5 in power and +1 critical to the end of that battle. All around pretty solid because, well, yes, it's only a 15k and double critical for a battle. It's only EB3, and you can keep spamming that 24/7 because you're not using any form of EB in the first 2 turns of the game. So by the time you get to grade 3, that's free game. But also, it's going to be boosted by grade 1s, such as Ling, for example, so 23k double critical. Granted, it's only blockable by 15, but it's still forcing out that 15k because it and eventually the Vanguard will be at double critical. But also, it can work when your opponent's at grade 2. This just says you have to be at grade 3 or greater. Imagine having a Vanguard that already has 38k, a restanding rear guard that is both times are going to have double critical, and an extra rear guard that has probably 23k power. All around, Zamug is a very solid grade 2, acts for really great early game pressure, has a really good consistency skill for Blangdmire, and not to mention the fact that he is not a once per turn on the offense, and is just a very good grade 2 nonetheless. So for Zamug, he does his job really well, and I like him a lot. Then we have our ride deck, a grade 2, one of Vacant Fang, none in the main deck, grade 2 instead of 5k shield, 10k base, auto and Rotapon by a grade 3 card of Blangdmire and card, reveal top 3 cards of your deck, put all grade 1 or greatest from Unlimited to the Soul, and then shuffle the deck, and if you put 2 or more cards in Souls, there's a draw card. So it's basically Zamug without the CB cost, which all around is pretty solid, because again, like Holoraptor and Zamug, you flip over top 3, you get some arbitrary number of Soul, you put at least 2, you do get to draw a card, and you get to shuffle the deck, so you don't have to worry about your triggers going to bottom, which is like the one downside of Holoraptor. But it's all around pretty solid. It increases the soul, possibly increases your hand, does it all for free. It's a very good grade 2. One of in the ride deck, sadly none in the main deck because it has no rear guard skill, but it doesn't really need a rear guard skill, and we have Zamug doing almost the exact same thing. Then we move on to our grade 3s. 3 copies of Heat Haze Acrobat Miroslava. I love how when she first came out, I did not like her at all. Then I ran her in Bartholmetus, and she was okay. Then Bartholmetus got better, and then she got better by default. And then I played her in here simply because, like I said before, this deck was based off of Suos. That's also why Crimson Expeller is here, because I would not have originally put Crimson Expeller in here, but then I realized how good he was. But then I put Miroslava in this deck because of Suo's match with it. And, well, granted it was only one game, but if I didn't put Miro in here, then I would not have been able to call out and invoke Alchemist because my back row center, which was an invoke Alchemist, was paralyzed. So if I didn't have Miro, I wouldn't have been able to call over invoke Alchemist with the one that was in Soul, and I wouldn't have had the restand, and I wouldn't have won that game. So I owe Miroslava that. So anyways, grade 3 2 personality 13k base. Auto when placed on the rear guard circle from the hand during your main phase. Counter boss 1, choose a card from your soul with grade less than or equal to your Vanguard. Put the chosen card into your hand if it's the same card name as the Vanguard, and call it to rear guard if it does not. And if you put a card to your hand, she'll get plus 5 as a power for that turn. Arm pretty solid because she can either help fetch Persona Rides, or, like I said before, she can help fetch you rear guards onto board, such as Alchemist, or maybe even Zamug, and any on-place abilities, because none of these cards have restrictions that have to be placed from hand, will proc off from Miroslava. All around pretty solid. I mean, hell, she can even pick herself if you have enough CB for it. Well, though then again, she can't really call herself. Well, she can call herself, but it won't proc her ability since she does have to be placed from hand. But either way, though, Miroslava is a good grade 3. She does eat into the CB problem a little bit, so you only really use her if you have to, but she can get your most important rear guards out of Soul in case all of them ended up in Soul somehow. And worst case scenario, she can add a Persona Ride and be an 18k base for that turn. Miroslava is a good grade 3. I like her a lot. She's situational, but the deck rarely gets into situational means, and when it does, it definitely needs the help, and Miroslava is that help. So 3 of her. Then we have 4 copies of the reason why this deck can hit the 8 cards in bind zone on first grade 3 turn. Single Strike Shatter Colossus. Grade 3, Twin Drive Persona Ride, 13k base, auto rear guard, when this unit attacks into a Vanguard. If your bind zone has 4 more face down cards in it, you may have this unit get plus 10,000 power for that battle, and then if you do at the end of that battle, put this unit to Soul. And then the ability that we have to worry about, auto when this card's put into your Soul by your card's ability. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, Blangdmire's card name, bind this card face down and draw a card. So, let's unpack this real quickly. It's a mega clause. You don't have to use the 10k skill if you don't want to. You also don't have to use the bind skill if you don't want to, but you probably will. It's a 23k swing. If you use the skill, it goes to Soul, and then immediately when it goes to Soul, if you're at the Blangdmire grade 3, you bind to face down, so you get more face down bind cards, and you draw a card. The important thing to note here is, this just means go to Soul by any means. Doesn't matter if it's its ability or something else. The reason why I specify this: Zamug. The reason why I specify this: Expeller. Reason why I specify this: Brainwash. And the reason why she's here: Ling. Something I learned during my matches on camera, when I used Zagmug or when I used Vacant Fang, it was one of the two, but I flipped over 2 Colossuses when I was on Blangdmire, and I sent them to Soul, and then I realized that they proc, and I got to 6 bind zone cards on my first grade 3 turn. Granted, it is hard as hell to do because you have to see this card all on your first grade 3 turn, but if by some miracle of God you manage to do it, because Blangdmire does not have a restriction on when his Divine Skill activates, technically speaking, you can Divine Skill when your opponent's at grade 2. You have to hit all 4 of these on your first grade 3 turn, and you have to be going first, but if you manage to do it by some miracle of God, your opponent's probably losing. All around very good grade 3. His skills activate regardless of which grade the opponent's Vanguard is at, so he'll always be able to go to Soul, bind himself, and draw a card, and his skill is just really good and allows for this deck to go from 0 to 180 so quickly if you get lucky enough. 4 Single Strike Shattered Colossus, very solid grade 3, one of the best grade 3 support cards, really cool. Then we have our last card in the deck and our main grade 3. 3 in the main deck, 1 in the right deck, a Faded One of Zittle, Blangdmire. So, Moon, that's all I'm going to focus on right now. Grade 3, 10%, 13k base. Auto Vanguard wins your attacks into a Vanguard by binding 2 or more, up to 4 cards from your soul face down. So you can bind 2, you can bind 3, or you can bind 4, no more, no less from those amount. You may draw a card. So, something I actually didn't realize, and it seems like I was, when I was doing it in the video, because I kept sacking triggers every time I didn't do it, so it seemed like I was doing it on purpose. No, that's not something I was doing on purpose, because I actually never knew it got that draw skill, because when I first read the card, I immediately skipped over this, because I was more focused on the power half, so I just ignored, the part that not even Suo did in the anime. But it's a free draw, but you don't have to do it if you don't want to. So if you're worried about decking out, you don't have to draw, or if you feel like there's a trigger on top and you don't want to draw in fear of that, then you don't have to. And then if you bound 4 more cards from that skill, your opponent chooses 2 of their rear guards, binds them face down, so it gets rid of 2 rear guards. Great. And then this unit group plus 5 in power for that battle for every 2 face down cards in your bind zone. So first grade 3 turn, if you bind the 4, again your ride line gives you 1, or your ride line gives you 3, and if you flip over a card either from Vacant Fang or Holoraptor, at least 1, you're immediately hitting that 4, which is nice. And he'll get plus 5,000 power for every 2 face down cards. So at least the first battle could be a 23k base. Second turn, he'll be a 33k base without using Persona Rides, boosters such as Alchemist, Brainwash, Expeller, etc. All around, pretty solid skill from there. Costs no CB, costs no discards. Technically, it's a Soul Blast, and technically it's not. And then his other skill, the part that broke all of us, Divine Skill, Auto Vanguard. At the beginning of the guard step of the battle, this unit attacks. So after this skill is declared and right before your opponent guards, if your bind zone has 8 or more face down cards, you may have this unit get a crit for that turn. It's not a mandatory crit, but if you want to give it the crit, cool. If you do, so that's the part that actually locks the Divine Skill. So when you guarantee to give the crit, you can have all of this, but if you choose not to give the crit, then the Divine Skill does not activate. But, if you choose to give the crit, if you do, your opponent cannot call or play Sentinels from hand until end of turn, so they can't PG this turn. And then choose one of your opponent's Vanguards, and until end of your opponent's next turn, all of your opponent's and that unit's abilities are nullified. So Persona Rides will activate, but abilities such as Twin Drive and Intercept, if the Vanguard for some reason had Intercept, won't activate, and it's pretty much like a hard nullification of any actual skills. Now, if you ride to a different unit, or you ride to the same unit again, then yeah, it'll reinstate the skills, but the player loses the skills. Say, for example, you use Raziel's skill to, gain the Miracle Trigger. Yeah, that gets shut down. But if you survive it, like I did by some miracle of God, then that was not meant to be a pun. That was just how it sounded. But then yes, if you survive to the next turn, then the skills will come back. But all around, it's a very solid grade 3 because free crit, and on the turn you pull this off, you're definitely going to have some high numbers, because again, this is just a free 20, assuming you pull that off. And then, not to mention the fact you have, again, other boosters such as Expel to give you another 10k, possible Persona Rides, Brainwash, and your actual booster and Alchemist. All around, Blangdmire is a very solid grade 3, and he literally costs nothing to use his skill. There's no CB cost, there's no Soul Blast cost, there's no discard cost, there's no nothing. It's just bind 2 to 4, most likely 4, and you can do that very easily with this deck. Cards from your soul face down, get numbers, bind your opponent's rear guard slowed on their play, possibly get a crit while they're at grade 2 if by some miracle of God you flip over all 4 Colossuses during your turn. And then nullify their Sentinels, nullify their abilities, and if they live, then, well, they lived very, very crippled. Blangdmire is a very solid grade 3, and they knew exactly what they were doing. Even if the rest of his support sucked, which they don't, but even if they did, Blangdmire honestly could carry on his own, and you could run whatever you want, because again, because he costs nothing, you can be so free with, what support cards you put in your deck, because all of them can have different costs, and you'll be fine. 3 of them Blangdmire in the main deck, 1 of them in the right deck. He's really good. His Divine Skill procs all your opponents at grade 2. Granted, it's very hard to do that, but once we find more consistent ways to get this boy into Soul, oh yeah, they're definitely going to break Blangdmire, and we're probably going to have to ban or limit this down, like how we had to limit Sturgana. And then, the free draw that doesn't even need to be here, but is there anyways, and the 5k power and bind. It's just good. And without further ado, that's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. All around, this deck is very fun and, very just... It's fun to play, and it's fun to play against, but it's fun to play against because, like, the odds are heavily against you. Like, again, you have consistent number gain out here that you can't really stop. Like, you can't damage deny this, because this is guaranteedly going off on first grade 3 turn, unless, like, this or this did not flip a single grade 1 during their skills. So it's going to go off regardless, so you can't really damage starve them. And, you know, this goes off regardless, so again, you can't damage starve them. You can't really expect to aggro them down and expect that to work, because while, yeah, aggroing does, like, work against them, they can still just plow through you with the Vanguard alone. They don't need rear guards, and Expeller procs from Soul, and if you can't kill Alchemist, or like, then anything they call from that point is just a good card for swinging with. Like, Blangdmire is just so good. You can't CB starve it, you can't resource starve it in general, unless you have a way to delete Soul, and currently there is no way to do that. It's just a very solid grade 3. So without further ado, I'm going to end this one here. Hope you guys enjoyed. Do not forget to like, comment, subscribe, join us for fun Twitch, and I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to send up your Vanguards.